I'm assuming that's why my opponent chose this name, but who knows? Maybe they're just a puzzle freak. A puzzle maniac. So, I did that, okay. What did I do? I was going to go for a Botvinnik setup with that H3 G4 idea that I did in the one game, but let's not. Let's go with something else. And just trying to get in D4. Recently from that Norway tournament, we saw this opening. I think it was Carlsen versus Rajabov. Not the same variation, though. We had things being quite symmetrical up to move 6 or 7. Alright, so what to do about this pawn tension? I could be grabbing some space. With D5. This knight will have to find a new home. I'm not so sure about D6 in that position, so how do I recapture? If I recapture with the pawn, if my opponent is going to be playing D5, they're doing so. It's got to be a bad version of some opening, right? He already took one step, so pawn takes. Is D5 really going to be good? Probably not. My opponent still needs a couple moves before they're kingside castled. 1, 2, 3 moves. So position opens up. It's likely to be favoring me. Wow. Now that's different. Okay, so pawn takes, queen takes, king takes, is otherwise I'm winning a pawn on e5. I don't think that's a good idea. I'm gonna go for this. Hang on. Yeah, with he doesn't have a good home. Without black having a c pawn up on c6, my knight could be jumping into either of these two squares. Both have support points. This pawn's supporting them. So pin the knight. Queenside castle with check. Looks good. Let me do that. Although no, you know what? Maybe I should have considered a bit more. Something like knight here for a fork. And if the king moves, then my other knight comes over and looks at this. But then I always have to contend with bishop here, pinning my knight. I want to be able to castle, get out of the pin. If bishop b4 is played, castle with check, and then jump into d5. All right. Castle first. And ooh, this bishop's in a pin. Knight d5, knight takes, pawn takes. Bishop takes bishop would be a losing move because I recapture and my pawn would be threatening the knight and my knight would be threatening f7. So knight d5, knight takes, pawn takes. The knight has to move immediately. And then I could take the bishop and then the pawn. I'm going to go for that. Knight takes knight, pawn takes. He's isolated. The c file is opened up. Rook c8 could come with check. Knight b4. Maybe I could play a3. Maybe I could play king b1. And actually I don't like king b1. Bishop f5 stuff. Maybe after knight b4, if knight takes, pawn takes, knight b4, maybe I don't do anything but just capture the bishop with check and then capture the pawn. If knight takes pawn with check, maybe I run towards the center with my king. I'm not sure who stands better here. I think the game could be decided in these next couple moves, and well, take that bishop. Knight takes bishop. Bishop takes knight. Interesting move. Okay. I don't know if I'm really getting anything now. No, I'm going to take that dark square bishop. Pawn takes bishop, I take this knight with check. These pawns then become split, and I follow up by winning a pawn on g5. So King takes. They're still in a pin. I have to do something with my dark square bishop. Do I back up, maintain the pin, or do I run in this direction looking at c5 and watching over d4, the pivot point for this knight? I like this. I don't think maintaining this pin is anything great. g5, bishop g3, I'm hitting this pawn. I don't know. I don't think it's so great. Maybe then there's knight e4. If there's a couple captures here, knight f2 occurs with the fork. So I'm just looking at bishop c5 check. I'd love to force this king to the 8th rank prior to this rook getting involved, but it's being watched over. And maybe I could still do this. Very tempted to do that, but maybe I should secure my dark square bishop's position. Yeah, I want to hang on to my dark square bishop. Knight g4 stuff I want to rule out. I don't think there's any rush, but now I think I go forward with this. Put pressure on this pawn. There is no push, so I think it has to be supported. Still quite uncomfortable. I think the rook, maybe it was a mouse slip, or maybe black was intending on watching over this, but I think rook here would have been better, so that when this position presents itself, if there is a check on c5, the king could have always dropped back to e8 and been a bit more comfortable. But now we have, if I take the pawn, there's a check, discover check with the knight. King here, bishop check. Bishop block, bishop takes, rook takes, pawn fork. Let's not do that. King here, knight b4 is quite annoying. You know what? a3 might be a good move. We do a3 with the idea here being what? Pawn takes, bishop takes with check. And also just b4 to reinforce this point. However, knight here might be good. I think that's quite alright, or is it? No, it's not. I'm dropping a pawn. My opponent's down to a minute. Knight takes, bishop takes. Or that. Well. Yeah, dropping a pawn. Well, let's just get out of that. Is there any compensation at all? Rook takes. If pawn takes, I could play here. This pawn is hit twice. Let's do that. However, bishop pin. Ouch. Ouch. That'll hurt me. Bishop here would have been a giant pest. Bishop check, king here. What do I do then? Nothing. Knight here. Knight here is going to be a monster. Well, look at this support point on d3. I'm down a pawn. My opponent's in a better position. The only thing I have is time, as usual. Yes. Lovely spot. Lovely, lovely spot. Well. Let's take this. I have to try and break this stuff down. To break this pawn up. Bishop check. Yeah, let me grab a pawn back, actually. Ooh, I shouldn't have done that. No, maybe it's alright. Or is it? Yeah, if there was an eventual pawn takes, I have a rook check. Or I think. Let's do this. I'm not even sure why. Why did I do that? Defend this pawn. Okay, I gotta take here and then here next. The rook is attacked. I'm actually better now. This bishop boxes out the knight. The rook is hit. Attack that pawn. Oh, I should have just taken the pawn and then the knight. That was stupid. Let's get this guy rolling. Get behind him and then push. Connected past pawns. My king could stop this pawn just in time. Then my pawn advances. And the other one kicks the rook from the blockading square. No time. Good game. Good game. Let's back up. Flip. Oh man, what could I have done better? I wonder, well, what could have my opponent done better? I thought I had a good position when I had the bishop pair, and then I think within those next couple moves, tables turned and my opponent became better. I wonder about this d6 move. I wonder if e6 is better to eventually establish a pawn on d5, because now you run the risk of me having a strong center with d5. I wonder if e6 is something a bit better. I think that's something to look into. I don't know that this could be correct. Is this still book? Is this okay to really go uncastled? It doesn't seem correct. Maybe it is. I'm definitely not good with the openings, knowing the theory and stuff. e5. Yeah, I don't know. Queens come off. I think this has to be good for me. Maybe I could be doing something different than the bishop move. I don't know. Can I get my bishop out? There's got to be something better here. My opponent was wise not to take my knight, I think. Unless you could get away with knight takes and the knight b4 stuff against my king and the bishop coming out on the f-file, or on the f5 square on this diagonal. That might have been something. Knight takes knight. I can't do bishop takes bishop. The knight would recapture. I'm down a piece. So knight takes, pawn takes, knight b4. It could be quite problematic for me. There's less. One thing you could be saying to yourself as black is if you're going to take this knight and white captures with the pawn, you have less concern about your own king. That white pawn on the d-file will act as a shelter. Throw a question. Drop back. I secure my bishop's position. Maybe this is just not correct. Maybe I should play it a bit slower. Get my king off of this file. Or maybe a3, b4, king b2 is better. I could play king b1 getting it off the file, but I run into more annoying things like bishop f5. So maybe this is a slight improvement for me. To not play c5 just yet, there's no rush. Maybe I could play it a little bit slower and look into eventually grabbing some more space with my 3-2 majority. I don't think that there's any rush. I'm a single move away from being fully developed. Maybe a3, b4, king b2 is best. Bishop e2, maybe a couple of rooks come off, and then my light square, my bishop pair could do something. Maybe c5 was just not so great. Rook c8, and now I have some concern of these discovered checks in connection with bishop f5 stuff. I have to be quite careful. Yeah, it's going astray for me. Now I'm down a pawn, so I think maybe this was a better setup. Instead of c5, the suggestion that I have for myself is a3, b4. My opponent did well to punish this quick c5 move. I'm pretty sure I can't do much about it. I'm getting pushed around. And when it gets to this point right here, how can my opponent do better? I think I dodged a great bullet here. Bishop pinning the knight. Or wait, excuse me. Instead of the pawn push, bishop pins the knight. And that is a difficult situation to get out of. Bishop takes pawn. You could just take the bishop. You're taking my rook for free. I'm in big trouble after bishop a4. I think we were both under a minute at that point, but that's my quick suggestion, at least when it comes to tactical shots that were available during the game. And then again at the earliest point, maybe there's a different decision on this move, 1, 2, 3, this fourth move, maybe e6 with d5, and then you don't have to worry about your knight position on c6. He could be secure. Okay. Good game, Jigsaw 82.